Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Now, some watches tell time. Some watches will define generations, and then there are watches like the Rolex Submariner that basically takes it to the next level. This is a watch that is so influential that even people who know nothing about watches recognize almost instantaneously. Now, if we call for the best watch in the world, more than likely the first name that comes to anybody's mind is a Rolex. Now, it's a different debate if we say, hey, we have other criterias to look at, but generally, given anybody across the planet, if you're talking to somebody saying what would be the best watch in the world, and they would instantaneously name Rolex besides any other watch. So today we are talking about something even more classic within the realm of the Rolex is the Rolex Submariner. So this is a special chapter in that story of Rolex, which is a 2007 Submariner, the M series, which is a transitional reference that quietly sits between the vintage Rolex history and the modern Rolex era we know today. And for many collectors, this may actually be the sweet spot of the entire Submariner lineage. Now, coming to understand why the 2007 M series matters, you first have to understand what the Submariner is and how it became to be such a classic watch. So, when Rolex introduced the Submariner in the 1950s, it was primarily designed as a professional dive instrument, pure functional. There was the clear legibility, there was water resistance, and the reliability. But over the decade, something fascinating happened. This particular model, which is Submariner, escaped the diving world and entered culturally into various forms of occupations. It started appearing in movies, it started appearing in any of the business meetings, on explorers, athletes, academic, personalities, entrepreneurs, and eventually became one of the most recognized luxury watches ever to have been created. And by 2007, Rolex itself was changing. The company was transitioning from traditional tool watch manufacturing into a modern luxury dominance. The M series sits exactly at the crossroads. So the 2007 M series typically refers to two major references. One is the classic Submariner date reference 16610, and now the famous 50th anniversary reference, which is 16610 LV Kermit. Now, both watches share many of the same characteristics that collectors love today. This era still, retains those classic features. One being the classic aluminum, bezel. Uh, Look at the, the 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 nice bezel, and you can hear this very crisp and unique sound that only a Rolex Submariner can make. And then you have the slimmer case proportions and the lightweight oyster bracelet that Rolex uh, enthusiasts so much appreciate. But Rolex also began introducing modern features, and that's what makes this watch historically fascinating. Now, the M series became a true transition watch. Some examples feature the engraved Rehaut, which has engraving in the metallic inner ring, engraved with Rolex, 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 at equal proportion and spacing, along with the serial number at the 6 o'clock position. Now, at that time, when this was first introduced, the collectors actually resisted this change. However, today, it has become one of the defining signatures of transitional era. The watch quietly captures Rolex's evolving in time. So let's discuss some of the most recognizable detail in luxury watches that came about. Uh, by the way, because it's been so highlighted in the Rolex Submariner, is the Rolex Cyclops, the tiny magnifying lens above the date window. It seems simple, but it completely changed how people visually identify a Rolex watch. Now, the Cyclops became more than functional, it became an identity. On the M Series 16610, the Cyclops still has an older school character. It catches light differently. So if I were to be moving, uh, it is catching light differently. It creates distortion at angles. It almost gives the watch a personality. And because the sapphire crystal slightly rises above the bezel line, you can see this, the reflections feel softer and more organic compared to the modern ceramic era Rolex watches. Now, oddly enough, many collectors say that the Cyclops is what makes the Submariner feel alive. Now, the beauty of the M series exists in small details which most people sometimes overlook. Now, the modern ceramic bezel have a unique quality of its own. The aluminum bezel on the 16610 age naturally, so you'd find that this would fade, it scratches obviously, and it develops an individuality. So no two watches age exactly the same way. The aging process creates emotional connection. The watch slowly becomes uniquely yours. And for example, yes, there are scratches, but this is, a almost, a 12 to 13-year-old watch, and it still looks almost new. I mean, with barring some hairline scratches here and there. So if you were to look at the value and emotional connect that this watch creates, that definitely is by far irreplaceable compared to any other watch. Now, the M series still uses the classic 93250 Oyster bracelet, which still has, the Rolex logo. It feels lighter and less over engineered. Some collectors even love the slight bracelet rattle because it reminds them this was still a true tool watch era Rolex, not yet fully transformed into the modern luxury jewelry. Now, the dial on the late production models use super luminova for long lasting nighttime visibility. The hour markers and hands are surrounded in white gold, not for luxury alone, but to prevent tarnishing over decades. So you can see this still has held, the test of time for over a decade. So even the smallest details were engineered for performance. Now, the crown movement feel inside the watch's legendary Rolex Calibre 3135, a movement respected across the watch industry for reliability and longevity. And the owners feel often the connect, as you described, uh, with experience of wearing this watch. and the feel of the crown, the threading, the winding action, the precision, everything is something that the owner falls in love with, and there seems to be a connect with each day passing that you wear it. And by far, you'd find that whoever owns a Submariner may perhaps having maybe even 20, 30 watches in their collection, would normally be wearing a Submariner more than any other watch. Now, if your M series happens to be the 16610 LV Comet, it adds another layer of history. It was released in the 50th anniversary of the Submariner. The Comet introduced the green bezel. So this one is not, it's obviously the black one, but in case you do have the green bezel, and it had the larger maxi dial markers. At that time, it felt controversial, but today it's one of the most collectible modern Rolex references because it represents Rolex experimenting carefully without abandoning the classic Submariner DNA. As we've seen with other Rolex watches, they have a limited model and the series numbers, and the experimentation happens very consciously and at a very slow pace. So, even though many owners will never dive with it, it's important to remember this watch was engineered as a serious underwater instrument. Now, this particular watch obviously can remain water resistant to 300 meters or 1000 feet. That capability wasn't marketing fantasy, it reflected Rolex's long standing obsession with durability and reliability under extreme conditions. Now, why the M series became so important? It still has that classic proportion, the aluminum bezel charm, the lightweight wearability, and the traditional Submariner character, but also introduced the engraving Rehaut detail. Again, this is one of the most coolest features, as you can see, uh, with a serial number at the 6 o'clock, and then the Rolex going all over in a uniform manner, which also becomes a quick check to ensure that the watch is authentic. If for example it comes in a secondary market. Um, Now we have the upgraded loom, we have the modern manufacturing refinement, and historically this may become one of the most important transitional Rolex in generation, and that's exactly why value continues to rise. So some strong example generally trade between 9,000 and 12,000, or maybe 12,500, with exceptional Kermit examples often significantly higher. Uh, so you can see that the Rolex Submariner not only is a great watch to wear and have, it's also a great investment. So it's just not a watch; it's sort of a piece of jewelry, something that you can have an emotional connect with it. So having the 2007 Rolex Submariner M series is more than a luxury watch. I would say it's a historical snapshot. Uh, Having a almost now what 2 decades. Uh, this obviously doesn't necessarily look like a almost a 20-year-old watch. It still gives you that feel of possibly like a 3 or 4 year old, because there are only some hairline scratches, some marks which could be brushed off easily, but it's held the test of time. So it's not just telling a time accurately, but also giving that feel of wearing a jewelry. And you can see the movement is literally moving so smoothly. I mean, so you can literally be looking at the seconds hand move sort of swipe out. It's not jerky movement. It's a little smoother movement, not obviously like a grand seiko type movement, but then this is Rolex and this is all mechanical. There is absolutely no hybrid feature in it. Like grand seiko converts the mechanics into electric, or kind of a battery movement, and that creates that smooth swipe movement. But this one is all mechanics. It's all what the best the basic hands, a human hands can make. So the question is, do you prefer the classic M series Submariner or the newer ceramic generation? Again, it's up to what a person likes, but this should be in any serious watch collector's collection. And this obviously is something that perhaps I may never part away, uh, because this is what reflects as Rolex is one of the best. And look at this noise. I mean, hear this noise. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in next video.